There's no doubt about it, this first week of December, the weather has become active once again. And as we continue through this week, there is no sign that that is going to stop. And we take a look in the short term at a clipper system that's bringing snow to many areas that have not seen it yet. And as we continue into the week, this warm and cold pattern really begins to shift. And we have many more storm systems on the horizon. We're going to take a look at all of it right now in our forecast. This should have stood out right off the bat, and it's the snow currently falling in the Great Lakes region and in southern Canada. All of that snow on its way to the northeast right now. We're going to take a look at one of our weather models, which will give us an idea of where that snow is going to fall heaviest and when it's going to fall heaviest as well. And we'll start here on Wednesday. You're seeing some of that snow just make its way into upstate New York during the day, but it's once we get into Wednesday evening that you really begin to see this snow take over portions of the northeast. I also want to mention you're going to be seeing some of these black lines, or isobars as we call them, packed pretty tightly together. Whenever we see that, that's a sign there's a big pressure imbalance and there's going to be a lot of wind here too. So we'll move this farther into the night. Now you're really seeing the snow take over. But if you look towards the coastline here, you're seeing a nice sharp cutoff between snow and rain. Now I'll tell you this, from what I've seen, even though our model's showing rain on the coastline, there may be some snow that falls originally here if it can fall heavy enough, and evaporative cooling would allow that to reach the ground. But for the most part, it is going to be too warm near the coastline for any of this to accumulate. A little farther inland though, especially in those higher elevations, that's where we're going to see moderate snowfall and enough that it's going to accumulate and be enough to plow. Now here we are moving into Thursday morning. Snow still falling across a good chunk of the region, but you're also going to begin to see some of these darker colors here on the back side of the system. Now first things first, we have a cold front. It stretches right through the region like this. So all this snow behind the front, that's post-frontal, and there's actually a strong signal that we're going to see snow squalls mixed in there, as there is actually some instability in the atmosphere, even though it's winter. So that's what I've been looking at closely as well. Coastline sees rain for much of Thursday during the day, but here we are into the evening after that front moves through. And at this point, our front is out over the ocean. That's when those snow squalls may bring some accumulating snow to portions of the coastline. And I also have to mention those lake effect snow machines at the Great Lakes. They are not done yet. We have more on its way, and that's mainly going to be the second half of Thursday. So expect things to continue to be on the more active side of things. We can also look at how much snow may fall. I'm going to take you to that right now. We're going to use the NBM and get an idea of amounts. And what I'll say is here we are when all's said and done. You're seeing a lot of this snow dictated by elevation once again. So our coastlines, of course, not looking at too much out here. I would say a coating at most, and it's likely not going to stick to the ground. My big question is, does Boston see its first accumulating snowfall of the year? I actually think yes, but it won't stick around. Meanwhile, you have more inland areas. You have some of the hills out in central Massachusetts. You have the mountains in northern New England. You got the mountains in upstate New York. And you have your Appalachian Mountains in the mid-Atlantic that are going to see snowfall accumulation on the order of about 2 to 4 inches. And in New England, that may be closer to 4 to 6 inches in those elevated areas. But you can clearly see where the valleys are, too. Out near Albany and out towards Burlington, Vermont, you have those valleys that may have a hard time getting more than, again, that coating to an inch. So it really depends on elevation once more. Lake effect snow is still going to be pretty significant. Guidance here spitting out as much as 2 feet on the leeward side of those lakes. So certainly a big event out there as well. And I mentioned the wind too, just to give you a quick idea of gusts. We have wind advisories in effect for a good chunk of this area. And you can see heading into Thursday, wind gusts are going to be in excess of, you can kind of see the highest out here, wind gusts in excess of 45 to 50 miles per hour on some of those ridges and in the higher elevations, but even across a good chunk of the area, lower elevations included, wind gusts are going to be in that 30 to 40 mile per hour range. Nothing dangerous, but it is going to be disruptive. And you want to keep an eye on that as you go outside. Now, snow is one part of the story. We also have cold weather, but that pattern is really beginning to shift. Let's take a look at where we're going as we close out this week and head into a new week and where that cold weather is going. We're taking a look at our upper level pattern right now, and this gives us a good idea of where those cold and warm air masses are. And we've been locked in a pattern that's been characterized by positive P&A, as we say. And all that means is that we have this nice ridge out here in the western U.S. And when that happens, the atmosphere compensates and allows it to get very cold on the eastern U.S. That's why we've had such below average temperatures. All this is actually set in motion really by this area of lower pressure out in the Pacific Ocean. So it's a really big pattern here. But one of the things that's missing now is we don't have this ridge. You want to see those orange colors up near Greenland. That blocks the cold air and traps it in the eastern U.S. We simply don't have that anymore. And as we move this forward, what you're going to notice is that we're certainly losing that cold air out into the Pacific. We have one more shot here. You're going to see that dip in, and that's going to be as we head into the weekend here. But it's on the backside of that clipper, actually. But once that's gone, watch our pattern begin to move, and you have that cold air really getting lost once again back to the northern latitudes. And we have this different pattern setting up as we get into the back half of the weekend and next week. That's some ridging you're seeing out in the eastern U.S. That's going to allow temperatures to warm. It's going to stay fairly mild out in the western U.S. And in the central U.S., I don't expect it to be cold, but we could see some more storm systems. That right there is a sign that we may have some cyclone development right out here across a chunk of the Midwest and the Southeast. And that tells me the pattern is going to be staying active. But that cold weather, like I said a moment ago, we're certainly beginning to lose it. Now we can take a look at some more info here. These are our temperatures at the low levels of the atmosphere. So this translates to our surface temperatures very well, basically without taking into account sun and clouds. Now, as we move through the week here, you're going to see there's our reinforcing shot of cold air coming behind our clipper. Hard to miss that one. Meanwhile, look at how warm it is in the western U.S. here. This is late in the week, Thursday and into Friday here. There's that cold air. It really locks in across the eastern U.S. heading into the weekend, but we're especially going to lose it in the north central U.S. and the southeast, and it'll hang on to the northeast just a little bit longer. Here we are now on Sunday, but this is a pretty warm air mass right there across the north central U.S., and it really takes over, and it's going to switch the pattern up significantly. But that said, we are still picking up on the fact there may be some colder shots of air too. Again, remember we saw that area of lower pressure in the central U.S. That cyclone development will allow for some warmer flow off the Gulf out here, and occasionally some colder shots of air out of Canada in the central U.S. So you'll see those shots kind of in and out here, but nothing really locked in as we head into next week. So that is certainly a bigger change that we're seeing. And if we take a look at actual temperatures, we can get an idea of roughly what to expect. But here we are heading into the middle of the week, the later end of the week too. There's our reinforcing shot of cold air. Those are temperatures that'll be sub-zero at night across the north central U.S. You can see it really spill across the country too, though it doesn't get as far south as before until we get into the back half of the week. So here we are Friday morning, and we're talking about lows that are going to be perhaps down to freezing in northern Florida. There is a chance for that at least. Temperatures may be below zero in the north central U.S. or at least in the single digits, but certainly a large area of teens out there. Even the western U.S., mild, but not very warm at this point. But as we head into the weekend here, you're seeing those 20s and 30s leave us. Even at night, it's going to be hard to find those across a good chunk of the country. And by Sunday, we're talking about highs that are returning to 60, even 70 degrees in portions of Texas and the southeast U.S., and especially out here in the desert southwest, it'll be quite warm as well. And moving into next week, you'll see a couple of those reinforcing shots of cold air, but nothing permanent. It just sort of dances around, doesn't quite stick around. And that's the bigger change in our pattern as we look into the remaining days of the first week of December and into the next week too. So before we wrap things up, I want to take a look at a couple storm systems that may impact areas outside the Northeast as we get into the weekend and as we get into next week as well. As we take a look at the late week and move into the weekend, there are several storm systems that are still out there for us to track. First things first, we just talked about it, but there's our Clipper system in the Northeast. As we move beyond Thursday and that thing gets out of here, you're going to see a system move into the Pacific Northwest. And this is as we get into the weekend here. Doesn't look like anything significant, but that's actually a pretty good shot of rain and snow that's going to hit the mountains out there. Not quite an atmospheric river event, but enough that there may be some flooding on the coastline and some heavy snow in the mountains, and it's going to stick around for some time here. You're seeing this really take us through the extent of the weekend in the Northwest. Could be some snow showers that make it a little bit farther into the northern Rockies, closer to Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, but it's not going to be something that is as pronounced as a river. Still impactful. We also have another system, a Clipper system, in fact, that may take one more swipe at the Northeast heading into the weekend. It looks much drier than this current one coming through, but could drop another inch or two in some areas, and that's going to be something to track on the back half of the weekend. And you're also going to begin to see a system materialize here in the southeast, so I want you to keep a very close eye on that as we push this forward into the start of next week. This may cause some flooding, and you're seeing this system in the central part of the country, the cyclone, begin to develop. It's pulling all all that Gulf air northwards here, and it's really juicing the atmosphere across the southeast and the Midwest. So this guy here, like I said, maybe some flooding, though I'll tell you, I haven't seen enough to suggest severe weather. However, there could be a few storms mixed in there as well. The severe weather just does not seem to have the support. I'm not seeing a ton of instability, but we are going to keep an eye on that because there is still a few pieces, a few moving parts with this that may change that story just a little bit. And as we get into the early and middle part of next week, the big question is going to be this guy right here. How does this cyclone develop as it moves farther north? There is some suggestion we could have quite the rainstorm end up occurring across southern Canada and the northeast here with some snow out on the back end of this in the north central U.S., but time will tell, and we'll have to keep a close eye, like I said, on this system. But impacts may come to this general area, north central U.S., Midwest, and even portions of the northeast. I know it's a pretty broad area, but it's a pretty broad system, and that would be in the beginning and middle days of next week. So you want to stay tuned, and there's our hinting at it right here coming in on Tuesday as that thing really has a chance to develop. So we'll be watching that closely. We'll be watching these other systems closely, and we're going to wrap up the video here. So hopefully you got something out of this, and next time we're back, we're going to keep you updated on those three systems on the horizon. Of course, I'll leave comments if you have any questions. If you see any snow, drop it in the comments as well. I'd love to hear where you guys are watching from. And as always, we do our weekly weather forecasts on Sunday, and if you're lucky, we're going to get into a lot more of these weekly interim updates. So stay tuned, like and subscribe, and we'll be back here again with an update in your forecast.